All right, guys, it's time for the first run of the marathon. It is going to be Earthbound Pajama Percent by Twog. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Justin. Hey, everybody. My name is Twug. I'm going to be doing Pajama Percent, which is a very glitched category of Earthbound. If this is your first time with Earthbound, doesn't really tell the greatest story, but you're. Hey, everybody. My name is Twug. I'm going to be doing Pajama Percent, which is a very glitched category of Earthbound. If this is your first time with Earthbound, doesn't really tell the greatest story, but you're going to see some really cool glitches, and I encourage you to go check out some of the current runners. Today I have with me the creator of the category and one of the best Earthbound speedrunners of all time, Ultimo Ice. Hey, Ultimo. Actually, no, Siri took it from me during his sleep, so I gotta take it back. Maybe today. We'll see what happens. Well, let's on that note, let's get started. Three, two, one, go. Yeah, we're gonna keep Ness in his PJs the whole time during this run, as per one of the main rules. No getting out of PJs. Oh. So we're gonna do a glitch right off the bat. Eh. Yeah, I can hear you, Alti. Alti is actually the one who invented this category. How long ago was that now, Alti? Yeah, you can do it under an hour in Mother 2. Well, that's fitting because Jeff is easily the most annoying character in the game. Well, other than Bubble Monkey.
Instantly, Jeff gets bodied, which is one of the most satisfying things of this category. Is Jeff always takes a few licks. And so now might be a good time to also to talk about what you need to do in order to complete Earthbound. Because if you have watched an any percent run, you know that it's a little bit shorter than this, and a lot of people question why that is. A lot of it is because of not having the Sound Stone. But the two things you have to do to finish the game of Earthbound is you have to drop down Lumine Hull, and you have to finish Magicant. And the reason you have to do those two things is if you do not, it will soft lock the cutscenes on Gygus. So, because basically those two events set up the cutscenes that will then inevitably become the Gygus prayers. No spoilers, I guess, on that. Not that there's spoilers in this category because it's not like the real game, but you will have to do those two things. And in any percent, it's a little easier because of the Sound Stone. But we can get it done in kind of a roundabout way. So everything he's working towards now is getting those two things done. And unfortunately, that means we have to do a few steps. For example, going through Dungeon Man, which you'll see. It's not going to make a lot of sense sometimes, this category, watching it. But you can see how he's loading up sprites. He's doing that by pressing X. They actually give you that hint when you get the town map. They're like, press X, it's at the top. Like a pun, I guess, or wordplay. But that's how he's loading up the sprite so quickly, is he's double tapping that X button. The only time you'll ever see it used in Earthbound, because otherwise you would never use that button.
Alright, I'm just gonna jump in here and read out a donation if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. We have $7 from Shala Bread. Thank you for your donation, Shala Bread.
Off to a good start. So now, if you're not confused enough, just wait for it. We have Jeff and Delam, and he's about to do Pooh sequence for him. So Pooh's kind of lazy too. So this category is just marked by a bunch of kids that make Jeff do the heavy lifting for them. And it's about time Jeff did some good in a speed run. So he's going to actually go and take the abuse from Pooh's elders for him.
Hey, Twug, could you possibly mute your mic in OBS? We're just going to capture the audio from Discord so everyone can be heard.
Yeah, he should be able to do that during this.
Done.
Just don't fail the prayer. Don't be that guy.
I think I've actually done that once. It's demoralizing.
Yeah, that's one mistake I've never made, but I've seen some runners do that multiple times where they actually, because in this sequence, if you do anything other than press confirmation when the text starts, you'll fail and you'll have to go up and talk to his master again and then come back down and reinitiate the prayer, which takes 3 minutes. So it's the dumbest 3 minutes time loss that I've seen runners do in live runs where they're on good paces.
It's a long walk of shame to walk back up and walk back down.
And yeah, you can see why this was kind of frightening for kids, because you're basically, I mean, Earthbound, for as happy and as fun as it is, does have some dark moments, and this is definitely one of the darkest, where your ancestor comes back as a ghost and rips off your arms and legs and tears out your eyes. Especially when, you know, it's not your ancestors, it's Pooh's ancestors. Again, it makes no sense sometimes, this run, but that's why it's fun. So if you don't know Earthbound at all, I'm sorry, because you did not just see what the realistic sequence here. You saw Jeff turning into Pooh. And you'll see that again here in a second of how Jeff is. And Jeff is Pooh in a literal sense during the speedruns usually. So. All right. So here's where all Jeff's work comes to fruition by giving Pooh a bunch of mental clarity and levels, which when we were routing this actually surprised us that it still actually gives Pooh all the experience and then works and keeps Ness in his pajamas. And that was one of the biggest questions when creating this run is, would these cutscene loads keep Ness in his pajamas? And it turns out, yes, it does. So again, you see everybody being lazy in this run except for Jeff so far, who's been pulling all the work. But now we're 12 minutes into the speed run, and we have Ness sporting his nice classic PJs and a full party as well. We've never even met Paula, and no one knows how she got.
I thought she came with you.
just showed up. And so now it's going to teleport back to Winters. The reason being is, as I said, we don't have Dad's phone number. We don't have the Soundstone. So one of the few phones we have in order to get out of bounds is right here in Winters. So if my voice wasn't coming through earlier, what you are seeing is two different file setups on his configuration. And he's going to use those. They're preset up, which is why this is considered a new game plug. And he's going to use these files in order to clip out of bounds. Most of the time, it's going to be this Summers clip because he can walk right on the step where the game displaces him off the sprite sheet. And he can just die in the steps. You're going to see just Ness constantly falling on these steps and dying and breaking his neck in some alternate reality, which on a soft reset, which is what just happened, that was not a hard reset, it's a soft reset. It keeps him off the sprite sheet in memory, and then he can just walk off the boundary on his main file. So hopefully that wasn't too techie, and that made sense because it's kind of a hard thing to explain sometimes. But essentially, the game doesn't reset you back on the sprite sheet between the files. And then he uses, the town map to load up sprites. And the town map is not as good as a Soundstone. That's why you can see okay, so you notice how the backgrounds are messed up on out of bounds a little bit? That's actually because the game in the database controls all the different backgrounds. So there can actually, that's why the randomizer is kind of fun, because you can actually get really trippy backgrounds in some of the fights, And so you're actually getting a different scene's background on the sprite that you're walking past. So it's interesting how that works out. But one thing about the slingshot teleport, which is the first one he did in 3'd, is it will actually teleport you back to the 3'd steps whenever you pass a certain boundary. So he's going to be very careful in situations like this because he's actually very close to that boundary. So he's going to be very careful because he would very embarrassingly soft lock himself if he was not careful here. Yeah, that. So I saw in chat. Yes, slashing Nest taking damage. He needs Sunstroke here, and this is actually a really cool trick that we set up in the run. He's actually going to Death Warp, but first he's going to wait for a certain amount of HP here, and then save the progress here. So you're going to see some interesting tricks here that involve Death Warping off of Sunstroke. Sunstroke is when you take too much. It's like a random chance that he just has timed out. That is then going to basically make him die at the right second here in a little bit. So you're going to see him out of bounds again. And right here is the 3'd files. Here's the slingshot file. Now this is one of the most specific tricks in the whole entire run. This takes a lot of practice, and you're gonna see him go up and do a full out of bounds setup here. So it's a slingshot maneuver. So basically, here's his 3rd file, right? Just watch very carefully when he resets, because when he soft resets, he's going to select his 1st file again, which is going to slingshot him to this spot on the sprite sheet on his other file. And then he's going to use that Sunstroke he just got in order to out of bounds on nearly, it's frame specific, not quite frame perfect, but it's frame specific. He's going to then it's basically a double out of bounds trick here. So you're going to see him do it again here. So this is his main file, and he's using that Sunstroke he just got to interrupt that stairs right on the edge of it with that warning, and then he can just walk off the sprite sheet. So he slingshot the 3'd, then walked off the sprite sheet. And he has to do that in order for a couple different things that he's going to do here. Again, we need to do 2 things to set up the Gygas cutscenes, and that is Lumine and Magicant. And in that order, actually. You can't even do it out of order. So that's why any percent does those 2 things, and that's what we're trying to get through, but without the advantages of Dad's phone number and without the advantages of the Soundstone. You see, here's a very funky looking dungeon man. Again, it's applying another sprite's background. But he has to keep Paul alive. Now we're going to do that double slingshot maneuver again that you just saw. So that's why he's keeping Paula alive. And we don't even know where she came from in this run. As I said, she just appears. She's just here for the party, I guess. All right. Now, I believe you just grabbed the Hawkeye out of bounds. I believe that's a part of the run we're at. So that's a fun trick. And I forget who found that. It might have been Classic James originally. But you can grab some items out of bounds. And so what he did is he knows exactly where that Hawkeye is on the master sprite sheet. And he walked up to it and grabbed it without ever loading the sprite sheet up, which is interesting. So he has the Hawkeye now in order to load up Deep Darkness. And then just drops down the final Dungeon Man hole. And so as far as the game's concerned, he just finished Dungeon Man, even though he just kind of dropped down the final hole and skipped everything. So a slight break here as we do our Dungeon Man cutscene in our pajamas. I mean, you have an argument. So if you're trying to imagine what this storyline actually means in the PJ world, it could be that everyone's just lazy. But it could also, I mean, really be Ness is just hallucinating all this or dreaming it. Maybe he took some cold medicine or something. I don't know. Maybe he's sick and took some cold medicine and he's having some trippy dreams. I have no idea what this storyline is, but... All right, so we do need some shopping because we're going to play Gygus still, and Gygus can be a pain in the butt without proper items. So we are going to try to at least buy some items. And the other thing is also Starman Deluxe, which is the PJ nightmare. If there's one thing in this whole entire run that every runner fears, it's Starman. We do have to fight him in this run, where you would not have to in any percent, and there's a good chance Jeff just falls on his face. Like a 25% chance that your run just usually ends right at Starman, which it's not like it ends. I mean, you can still reset and try again, but there's about a 25% chance every time you reset for it just to end again. So every time, I mean, in like a marathon setting, it's not going to matter if he dies a couple times, but in a run where you're going for world record, that is going. So you're going to see that double slingshot move again, but this time afterwards he's going to heal Paula because now we're done doing this maneuver. So this is his other file. I don't know if it's second or third on his actual Super Nintendo, but it's the slingshot file. So he's going to slingshot the 3 again and then get out of bounds again using the same sunstroke that he got in Dusty Dunes, which does the same damage tick as a cold. So sometimes I may say cold accidentally, but it's basically the same thing. Yeah. So in Earthbound, when a kid dies, the ghost follows you, but that's on his other file because the other file you only want one kid alive. But on this one, on his main file, she's still alive and well. So again, we're talking about alternate universes. That's the new Game Plus standing of this. There is a universe where Ness falls and breaks his neck over and over again in Summers in order to make this universe. Yeah, and that's why Earthbound is both an awesome and frightening experience for young gamers. I remember playing this when I was a kid on the Super Nintendo, and I don't think the dark aspects of the game were even really something I noticed because I was just, it's bright colors, it's a lot of fun, the game. And then you realize that there's child abduction, there's prostitution, there's, basically your ancestors ripping your arms off. There's all sorts of dark concepts within the game that you wouldn't imagine are there. Now, they're not overt, but they do exist as concepts, and you're just like, this is a child's game. And Mother 2 is actually a lot more risque. So if you've ever seen the Japanese version, we couldn't even do that run because Ness and his PJs, especially Magic Hand, means he's naked. So the Japanese just, they have naked Ness and Magic Hand. So, but in the US version, they toned it down and put him in his.
Oh.
So here we go. We just defeated Starman Deluxe, which is the scariest part of the run, and he passed it. But now you can see we're going to level for days. Now, all those times you leveled up on Foppies as a kid and you thought that you were getting an advantage later, this is going to prove that you were wrong. The game scales very well, and we're going to be most of the way to being able to fight Gygus just after this fight. So you're going to be leveling for a while here. This is why we actually make Turbo legal on the US run on this category, because otherwise you'd be sitting here and tapping this for minutes and minutes on end. So if you have any donations or anything to talk about, now would be a good time.
No donations as yet, but I will be reading out some goals. So guys, we still have an incentive for Gunstar Heroes, one roll easy. That's nothing out of $15, so get your donations in to get that going. Super Ghouls and Ghosts, any percent professional category, $25 to get that one going. So chuck your donations in, it's all for the children. And obviously these children definitely could have used Save the Children, because as you know, this game's messed up, man.
Yes, please save these children because we still have Gygus coming up and it's not manipulated. It is a real Gygus fight with basically 2 battles by the time we get.
Oh, I've had many world record paces die to a beta by Gygus.
By that he means Rock and Beta, because the main spell in this game that Ness gets is called Rockin'. It's your favorite thing, so you can rename it, but for the most part, people, if you play casually, will call it Rockin'. And there's different levels, alpha, beta, and then what's the next one? I always forget that. Gamma? And then Omega.
Yeah, Gamma, Omega, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so when he says beta, the worst thing Gygas can do in the first round is cast Rockin' Beta, because it will hit all of your kids for nearly mortal damage, if not mortal damage. And one thing unique about Earthbound that's not in really any other RPG I've seen, and that probably is, so I'm probably going to get pointed out that I'm wrong. But the HP actually scrolls when you take mortal damage, so you have time to save your kids. But unfortunately, it's not enough time with how little their HP is in this run. So in a normal casual run, you'd be in the hundreds and hundreds of HP. But in this run on Gygas, we'll have enough, but it's not a ton. So, but for an alpha, if he does a Rockin' Alpha, then most likely everyone will survive. Paulo might be the exception, but otherwise, people should survive. But at least Teddy Bear's still alive. So in the Earthbound game, the Teddy Bear has a 75% chance of taking a single point of damage from one of your kids. And he's still alive and well. He's ticking. So you can see he's going to go get this bracelet. That's just a money item. I mean, since we're not playing the game, we don't have a lot of money at all. And now here's one of my favorite glitches. It's a exit mouse glitch. Usually in the game, you set exit mouse points by walking into dungeons, and it's a way for you to kind of warp to the entrance of dungeons. But if you never set that entrance, like we have not in this game, then you're going to see an interesting thing. You're not even going to remember how we got here at this point. And we're back in Dusty Dunes, the desert, which we walked into earlier. You may or may not remember walking into that when we were getting sunstroke earlier. And that was the one time we entered a dungeon. So when he uses the exit mouse, the game doesn't know that he's in Starman base, so it just throws him back to Dusty Dunes, and he's able to quickly get out. So that's one of my favorite glitches in the whole entire game, is the exit mouse. And one thing we're missing from this run is a good cliff skip, right? I don't think we do any cliff skips here.
Not anymore. We used to when we used to go to Shroom before we figured out we could go straight to Delam.
I guess you'll just have to cliff skip Blue Mine.
I'll leave that up to Classic James.
You can save on a perfect cliff skip in Lumine. You can save a few seconds, and we have one runner who's crazy and tries it, and half of his runs in there. Love you, James. And a cliff skip is basically using the subpixel garbage in the game to get through walls. It's done a lot in any percent and in photo percent. Other categories heavily, no out of bounds actually, is just all it is cliff skipping. So if you like to see cliff skips, there are plenty of categories that overuse that concept.
No crows.
And that's one thing I love about Earthbound speedrunning. A little plug for the game if you ever wanted to play this game. It's one of the greatest games of all time casually. If you ever wanted to speedrun it, There are tons of categories with tons of different themes. This is one of them. Staying in pajamas is just a silly category. But we also have all photos, where your one goal is to get every photo in the game. Randomly photos appear. There's 32 of them. And one category is get all of them as quickly as possible. So it's a pretty fun game, and it's RNG heavy in like the glitchless runs. It's all decision making, so it's not as scripted as a lot of speedruns are, which makes it unique as a speedrun. So this is important. He's going to give the Franklin badge to Paula. There's a very important reason for that, and we'll get to that when we fight Gygus. There's really two things you're going to need when you fight Gygus in order to make the battle basically unlosable, besides the first move of the game, which is Rock and Beta, which is why we hope for that Rock and Alpha. But other than that, the battle's basically unlosable as long as you remember two things. Spoilers for those that want to play the game casually and have that moment of illumination when you play it, because it will definitely ruin the trick, and that's in every category. So you're going to see him teleport, and he's failing those teleports on purpose, so that movement is a teleport, but he's failing it on purpose, and it's the gain ground. You can see how slowly he's moving in the swamp, so he's actually going to teleport past the swamp area so that he doesn't take damage in the deep sections, but also so he moves quicker through. That's just the animation for the teleport. So the question was, is he gaining momentum? Yes, but that's the actual animation for the teleport. But if you run into walls, you interrupt that animation. And there's two types. One where you swirl in circles, that's beta. And alpha is you do a straight line, but you can control the direction you go with the D-pad. So you can see him controlling that direction as he walks through the swamp. And then he runs into the wall before the teleport finishes so that he doesn't actually teleport. Because if he actually teleported, that'd be bad. That would lose a bunch of time. Perfect teleport there. That's actually a really hard movement to do, and he just pulled it off flawless. And you can see all the different movements he did at high speed, and the room you have in that final corridor is actually very slim, and he just navigated right through it like a pro. And now we need to rely on Jeff yet again, so you just pray that Jeff doesn't fall on his face. A lot of people, so there's two types of people in the community. There are those that think Jeff is the representation of all nerds and love him because he's flawed, he's not perfect. And there's those of us that think he's everything that's wrong with the stereotype of nerds, is that he constantly fails. So you can pick which side you're on there at home. But basically, this is the part of the game where Pooh comes in and is like, hey, I learned Starstorm, even though like he's already here. He just comes back in, he's like, hey, I just learned Starstorm, which is supposed to be this ultra powerful spell, but after we just cheesed a 1400 bottle rocket or 1500 bottle rocket, that 300 damage doesn't look very impressive. And one thing we're doing with Jeff is we're cheesing the damage of his bottle rockets because the damage is based on his hit percent. And hit percent is controlled by speed. So what we can do is we can cheese the speed by using speed items, which I don't know if... do we get the Crystal Charm anymore in this run?
No, we don't get the Crystal Charm, but we are about to go get the Rabbit's Foot.
Yeah. So Rabbit's Foot is the highest speed item in the run, or in the game. And we're going to put that on Jeff, and the reason being is it cheeses his speed. It gives him unnatural bottle rocket damage because he's going to hit all those bottle rocket attempts, because one multi-bottle rocket is like firing 20 simultaneous normal bottle rockets, and each one has a different hit percent roll. So by cheesing his speed, we're going to hit more of those than we're going to miss, and it's going to just create ridiculous damage. And we use that in the glitchless run. Like, that trick is used in most categories. So, again, in the 80% run, which is the direct comparison to this, we would never do all this. We would just walk and use the Soundstone on Lumine Hole and then drop in. Since we don't have the Soundstone, we have to go through Dungeon Man, through Swamp, through Lumine. But the spawns are turned off, and that's something we haven't talked about. If you've noticed, you have not seen any random... I assure you, as a speedrunner of Earthbound, there are random encounters in these sections. The reason why you're not seeing any is at the very beginning, And then another trigger that we do turns off cutscenes, turns off spawns because you're in a cutscene. So whenever there's a cutscene, the game sets the random encounter flag to impossible. And we teleport out of cutscenes. At the beginning, we actually out of bounds out of a cutscene, but then we teleport out of the other cutscene in order to trick the game into thinking that spawn should be off. And that's why you're not going to see any encounters. He's not this lucky. I assure you, Twug is not a lucky man. So he would not be seeing this free of Illumine Hall unless he was cheesing the cutscenes.
Red light, green light, man.
This is one of the most violent parts of the glitchless speedrun. It's called the horseshoe. And you would never want to just take it this carelessly, because normally you would die a horrendous death if you just ran full skip sandwich into this section. But since he knows spawns are off, he doesn't have a care in the world. But we also have to defeat this sanctuary to get to Illumine Hall, because that's just one of two triggers we have to do in order to beat the game. So he has to first drop down Illumine Hall, but to do that, he has to defeat this big boss that's in the way. Now, keep in mind, this is an in-game boss. He's fought one encounter, which was that Starman. So he's really taking 4 people with one battle in under their whole entire experience resume, and then fighting this in-game boss here. And he's going to do that by cheesing the bottle rockets. You saw he just got the rabbit's foot. And so a low-level Jeff just did 2,000 damage on a bottle rocket. Again, that's the speed advantage that you have on Jeff. Basically upping his accuracy on those bottle rockets. So 2,000 damage means he hit approximately 20 bottle rockets of damage. It depends on the damage roll of each individual hit, which can be anywhere from 90 to 120. So it's basically how many hits you have times each individual damage roll between 90 and 120, and that's your final damage. And it's all because we boosted the speed of Jeff, even though he's so low in level. And so we're going to do a little bit more leveling here, and then there's a cutscene. So if you have any announcements or donations, now would be a beautiful time to tell us those.
Still no more donations, but we do have some bid wars that do need some loving. So we've got Super Mario, that's a Super Metroid Exertion, Save or Kill the Animals. We've got Castlevania 3 Route Selection and Castlevania Bloodlines Character Bid Wall. No attention on those yet, so if you want to make your choice the run, throw a few dollars their way.
And Irida Sensei in chat asked, is this tile-based or is this encounters? And yes, it is. So basically, each tile set has a different percent chance of spawning something, and there's the tiles basically scattered throughout all the maps. And I said his name wrong on purpose. We had this talk before stream, off topic, of how people pronounce our names. So it's iridescence, had the question. But basically, each tile has its own percent based on RNG 1 and 2 put together, which are RNG values stored in the game. But that can also be manipulated in certain times because there's an off by 1 programming error. If you're a programmer, you know what an off by 1 is. And there's actually one that exists in Earthbound that allows you to skip a lot of spawn plates by walking in between the tiles, but that's a whole different strategy and a whole different run.
I'm going to try a cheeky little new teleport here that I've been working on that I saw Siri do.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is there's 2 different types of teleport. One where the ramp up, so earlier said, is he building momentum? That's actually an animation. And he's going to do an alpha and then spin around in circles and hope that he can spin around in circles well enough that he finishes the teleport. So it's an alpha, a straight line teleport that he's controlling, which is really, really difficult because you don't have a lot of space to work with here. So he's going to attempt that. And you can see this is one of my favorite glitches. So if you've never seen this game before, you're supposed to be really small here, but since there's no small pajama sprite, and this is one of the things that I loved most when I routed this for the first time, is since there's no small Ness sprite for his pajama mode, he just is a gargantuan Godzilla stomping around this overworld, as it's called. I mean, the first time I saw this, I think I lost it on stream. I was just laughing so hard because normally, again, like you can see the tail that he has. It's not a tail; those are his friends. So basically, everyone has a small sprite except for him, who's just Godzilla, stomping around this overworld here. And you're going to see that exact glitch. You're going to see that in a little bit too, because the game doesn't know what to do with this sprite set. So it's just like, I don't know what to do with Ness and Pajamas, so I'm going to use the Pajama sprite no matter what. And that's going to become really apparent in the in-game too. I won't spoil it for you, but if you know the game, then you'll see it exactly when it happened. Just like everyone in this run right now, Twug and myself and everyone, Ness has just woken up for this whole entire run. He has his nice bedhead forever. And that's the point of the category, is to keep him in just woke up mode. So one more out of bounds here. So in another universe, once again, Ness falls down some steps in order for us to continue this run. And this is one of the other few telephones that work because it's still within winter. And he's doing his little moonwalk into the void. And then eventually, basically using this sprite that's already preloaded to enter Magican. So the other thing we had to do, if you're paying attention, is we have to defeat Ness's Nightmare. That's the other thing we have to set up to fight Gygus, or else the game will soft lock, and soft lock in an irrecoverable way. So we have to defeat Ness's Nightmare. But he just kind of walked over to the Flying Man area. But spawns are still turned off, so as you can see, there's absolutely nothing for him to fear. He's just kind of walking through Magicant. And this is another place where we have a lot of issues with spawn percentages in the glitchless run, so this is a very scary section. Unless you're Andy Perfect, you can't walk through that section in glitchless. But this part is real, so this part he has to actually skip. Oh wow, that's actually a really rare skip to get so quickly. Those Callous encounters that you can win with multi-bottle rockets, you prefer not to, though. Have to win those with multi-bottle rockets. So he's going to set these guys up and hopefully get them stuck, and so he doesn't have to fight any of them. Fighting them would cause a huge time loss in like world record attempts, for example. So you can see him kind of avoid these guys. Ooh, that guy's creeping up on him. You really don't want these guys to catch you. It can go horribly wrong if they do. They have a lot of, it's just like the Kraken earlier in the game where they have a lot of painful movesets that hit all of your party members at once. Sage Hero asked if the soft lock on Gygus is due to anti-piracy. No, it is not. The soft lock is due to this and also Lumine Hall setting up the final prayer cutscenes. And actually what happens if you don't set these up correctly is the first prayer starts on the third phase of Gygus, and you're just forever waiting for the cutscene to start. Like it goes to it and there's no one there, like it's empty. You're like, and you just sit there like, okay, I guess no one prayed for the kids, so they died in this soft lock. So it just kind of freezes forever. So there you go. Normally you would do this section with just Ness. This is like Ness's like own spiritual journey inside Magicant, but today he decided to bring his friends because why not? I mean, we already saw Jeff as Pooh. Like, why not just have all your friends join you in your own brain? Because Magicant is actually inside Ness's brain in the storyline. So his friends just joined him. It's like Inception. He brought him along in the dreams. Which causes some very, weird stuff to happen. Because if one of your kids actually is dead during the next section, during the next cutscene, when they wake up, it just causes the whole entire cutscene to go awry. But you can still see it outlines all the kids. So that's still, I don't know why the code would have it so it outlines all kids, because the kids aren't supposed to be here, but still puts them all in black and white, and here we go. They all get some experience on the battle, which is good, because you'll need, because there's only 3 actual fights before the final boss. So you're talking about, as someone said earlier, a very long game of leveling up and getting items. And because that's the other thing we don't talk about. Not only are you horribly under-leveled, but you also don't have the items that you normally have in a casual run. And now we're going to go fight the final boss. But there are 2 items you need in order to make Gygus essentially free. Now, that does not mean Phase 1. On Phase 2, things can go wrong too. But Phase 3 is going to be free if he has 2 items, which is the Sea Pendant and the Franklin Badge. Now he has both of those items. I saw him get them. Yeah, that weird cutscene there. So you can see how all the kids were standing around all the kids. So they came back from his brain and then vanished. So that's why the cutscene kind of goes awry there. Especially if one of them's dead, it goes even worse. So it's funny that they all come out of his brain together and then kind of warp into each other. But yeah, so Franklin Badge actually deflects lightning, and the Sea Pendant will actually 90% negate the freeze ability. And also negate flash fully. Now Gygus's moveset is a flash to all the kids, which can KO you instantly. So if you don't have anything that negates KO, it could end your run instantly. He has a multi-target freeze, which does about 180 damage or so, but with the Sea Pendant, it's going to do like 10. And then he does a lightning strike, which will try to hit twice for 90 to 120 damage, but the Franklin Badge will deflect that. And then his last move does nothing. So as you can see, if you have the Sea Pendant and the Franklin Badge on Paula, then the most he can do to her at any given moment is 10 damage. So because of that... Oh, you saw him jumping in and out of that cave. That was actually to set up an exit mouse glitch. So you'll see that again in a second, that area. Or no, actually, that's to get the teleport. That wasn't even for the exit mouse. That was actually to get the teleport. Some of the teleports that you get, the triggers are kind of seemingly innocuous, and that's one of those. Is to get the Saturn Valley teleport, you have to step in and out of Saturn Valley, because normally you get it when you step into it. But since he was already in Saturn Valley, because of the cutscene after Magicant, you had to step out of Magicant and back in. So that wasn't for exit mouse, that was for teleport.
Yeah, if you don't do that, you soft lock.
Yeah.
I think once I figured out a way to get through it, but like it took like 20 minutes.
But what if we want to see you play for 20 more minutes?
I'll do a victory lap.
So we're reaching the towards the end of our journey here. To recap, Ness woke up and decided that he didn't want to save the world, so he went back to bed and let Jeff basically solve all the problems at the beach. And then his friends basically had an intervention in Summers while he was relaxing on the beach and said, hey, you got to save the world. And now we're at Gygus. The end. All right, so remember how we got the Hawkeye out of bounds, which you didn't see because he did it while the sprite was unloaded, so he did it in the dark screen, so it happened so quickly you probably missed it. He's going to do the same thing here for Meteor. To get to Gygus, we have to have that Meteor fragment, but if we went back on the sprite sheet, it would ruin a lot of things for us. In fact, I don't even know if we could get to the meteorite if we got back in bounds. I think there's still cops blocking it. Oh no, there's not. But Captain Strong's there still. So he actually never left the initial cutscene. No, they're there. So you can see Pokey still wandering around. Hey, Pokey, we're supposed to fight you in a second. Get out of here, Pokey. What are you doing? So Pokey's still there, but we grab it out of bounds and then just teleport away. So we're not going to deal with him today. So that kid at the bottom you just saw is actually one of the main antagonists. I know you wouldn't guess it from this run, but we're about to fight him in the final sequence. So he came there to see us off. But he's there because we never did the initial cutscene, so the game never unloaded that sprite from that section. Which fun Earthbound fact is his name's Pokey because of a typo. His name's actually supposed to be Porky. But it turns out that there was a typo, and so now he's... So you can see he has some super bombs. He bought those in the swamp in order to make this battle a little easier. There's going to be a lot of setup here because he still has to go through the end-game cutscenes in this particular run. So, well, in every really run, if you don't go through this section as well, it should be actually mentioned as a prerequisite for fighting Gygus because you have to do it. But since it's one solid sequence, we oftentimes don't mention that you have to go through these cutscenes no matter what. So if there's any final donations or announcements, now would be a great time while he's going through text.
No new donations, but don't forget our goals, guys. We got everything from the Lion King Upside Down Simba Showcase to Final Fantasy XIV, fighting King Thordan and his knights. We can also see Batman Returns Mania % category. And there's a bunch of bonus games as well, such as Ren and Stimpy Presents Stimpy's Invention, Dress Up plus we showed you something Sailor Moon, Senshi Sailor Moon. We also have Sonic the Hedgehog Zool Glitched Showcase, and some stuff for like New Super Luigi U All Forts category. So get your donations in, and we can see those games run in this marathon.
All right, so we're about to get to the final area where all the kids are turned to robots, and because basically the storyline, he has to transfer their souls to robots so they can travel to the past. I think they're traveling to the past, to the same area but in the past, where there's aliens. Yeah, it hits all the scientific sci-fi tropes all at once. Like it all happens right here, right now. So here he goes, transferring their souls to robots to go to the past to fight aliens from the future, because the actual aliens are from the future. So hopefully I said that right, Twug. Did I say that right?
You did say that
confusing
right.
to me.
Oh, I didn't get the story until I was an adult. As a kid, I just thought I had no idea what was going on. I even had that fancy instruction manual that came in that big, huge box that made the game so expensive.
So, as I said, they all get turned to robots. Or do they? You know where this is going. Again, there's no sprite for the game to realize how to turn Pajama Nest into Robot Nest. So this is another thing that surprised us when we routed it, is the game actually keeps Nest in his pajamas. His soul actually gets transferred into his own pajama body. He's too lazy to even go all. So one more out of bounds, and that's just so, because right now we're actually out of cutscenes. So you're going to see things moving around. So for those of you that have been excited about the spawn plates during the run, you're going to get to see spawns, but we're going to go out of bounds so we don't have to fight any of them. But for a second, you'll see them. Another fun fact is all these spawns here, except are diamonds. And the reason they are like those diamond shapes is because that's the default sprite for all enemies in Earthbound. And some of them didn't actually get their own sprites because they just ran out of time or something. I don't know exactly why they didn't get their own sprites, but they didn't. So all the final enemies and a lot of enemies throughout the game are diamonds just because there's no sprite for them to select. And here we're going up the intestines of something. I don't know. There's a lot of different theories about what all this means, but some people think, you know, it's leading to a uterus. Some people, I mean, there's a fetus theory is wrong. The people who made the game have even come out and said that there is no fetus theory. But there's definitely some tubing here that's supposed to be intestines of some sort where we fight Gygus. Yeah, I would go with the colon theory more than the uterus theory here, I think, Manix. Here we go, and you can actually hit Gygus in this phase. If you do, he'll reflect the damage back on your face. And it's a common error runners make when they're too nervous or they're not paying attention. Alpha, that's good. We talked about the beta that you don't want to get. He got the alpha, so now he basically wins, as long as Jeff doesn't really fall on his face. 800's not bad. These guys have high speed, and it's a speed check when you're actually fighting these guys, so 800 is actually very decent damage for the first multi-bottle rocket, so he should get out of this in 2 rounds. Pokey has Porky, if you want to call him that, has 2,000 HP, so he's already about 1,200 in, which again is the power of those multi-bottle rockets, because normally multi-bottle rockets should miss in this fight, because Pokey has too much speed. But we just boosted our speed, and we can actually hit him. And he hit Ness for damage too. It's a perfect scenario, actually. He's got the perfect RNG here. Because Pokey charges forward, he's scripted to do that in round 2. And if he hits anyone other than Ness, they die. So he hit Ness. Yeah, it's this perfect scenario right here for him, going into phase 2. Here's phase 2. We got another 2,000 HP, but this time he's actually fighting Gygus. He's going to use bombs and PSI moves in order to get through that pretty quick. And if he gets to phase 3, then the run is essentially won because of the setup he did with the C Pennant and the Franklin badge that I explained earlier. If you missed that explanation, it takes too long to explain again. But essentially, Paula is invincible as long as he heals her up once, because she is a little low on HP right now. He probably wants to heal her. There you go. And now it's virtually impossible for him to lose as long as he gets through this fight, which he got the Starstorm off. That's a good 800 damage. So he's well on his way here. And this is why they call it fetus theory. If you heard me mention that earlier, we hate fetus theory in the Earthbound community. It's not true, but everyone always comes in and is like, it's a fetus in the background. So you'll see it more even on the next phase, where it looks like there's a fetus on that animation in the background. It's not. We've proven this. When it multiplies the image, you'll see why people think it's a fetus. But round 2 is over, so basically now the game is won. He just needs to finish phase 3, which is about 7 minutes of prayers. Again, if you want to play this casually, don't look for 7 minutes, because this is how you win the game. The game is meant to give you a sense of hopelessness, and that sense of hopelessness comes in the fact that you cannot damage Gygus in any traditional way. The only way you can actually defeat Gygas here is if you pray with Paula. It destabilizes Gygas, and then each prayer does like a lot more, exponentially more damage. And it's the only way to damage him. Otherwise, he resets his HP, which is maxed out every single round until you use prayers. So the game is literally supposed to get you to the point where you're praying because you don't know what else to do. You're praying for your life, literally, and it works. So when people find that out casually, they're like, oh. And this fight was actually really scary. The question was asked if this was scary. And as a kid, when you hadn't seen anything like this before, Gygas actually did scare a lot of people. So, and the origins of Gygas are actually scarier than Gygas itself. The guy who came up with Gygas, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. Maybe Twug can do it. He actually stepped into a movie theater and saw what he thought was, I'm not going to say the word, but yes, he thought a girl was getting abused in a movie theater when he was a kid, and that memory haunted him. So when he came up with Gygas, he sat in a dark room with a psychologist and recalled that memory and the feelings he had at the time of when he stepped in this movie theater. And it was not actually what he thought it was. It was actually just an old movie that was a violent scene. But he was like 6 or 7, and it stuck with him so much that he had these feelings of hope, of doubt, and dread. And he translated all of that and went back to his childhood trauma to bring that feeling into Gygas and that hopelessness. And the things that he says during that fight are things that he recalls when he felt that moment in his childhood where he was traumatized for a lot of his youth. And so that's how like kind of demoralizing and kind of like dark Gygas is. And you can actually feel that through the way that he talks. And like this, see, like it hurts, like, you know, like those things that he's saying, it's very real and very dark and it's morbid. And it is a scary sequence. I don't know how we played this as kids.
I still hear break out the eggnog. Break out the eggnog.
But yeah, so now going back to fetus theory, you can kind of see like how it looks like a baby in the background if you combine two of the faces together. But it's not. The person that's come out and said it is not a fetus. Everyone can relax on the fetus theory. Mannix called it. It's more of a colon theory, so we can all put it. Although one positive note is this is actually one of the first games that had a healthy relationship between two men, actually, because everyone always kind of assumed that Tony and Jeff were boyfriends, and they actually came out and said, yeah, like they are, like that's why it seems like they are, because they are. So it's really cool that the game was progressive enough to have a really healthy, homosexual relationship, even when that wasn't the norm in this country. So that's pretty cool. And so as a pre-warning for those that value their eyesight, we're about to have a bunch of resolution problems. It always happens when we finish Gygas, so when the game goes all freaky deaky, just know that that's just part of the textures. You can't help it. So yes, there's all these prayers. How many prayers are there, Twug? I'm too far out of it.
Oh, I can't remember exactly. There's only 3 left. Well, there's the burger shop, then your mother, and then 2 more.
Dennis, you can't go back on your word now. You're the one running the marathon, so it's colon theory now. Sorry, buddy. Bringing it back to the Earthbound community. But yes, the run's very so timing is going to be 2 prayers after this. So this is the final cutscene, and it's usually in about a minute after now. So well, he's a little ahead of me on his feed, so I'll let him call out when he's done. But we're within about the 30 seconds to 60 seconds of the run being over. So get ready for that.
Time.
And we're a little bit behind on our stream, but basically the final prayers when the game is finished or complete. And that happens on our screen, at least, just in here in a second when he hits pray for the final time. You're going to see that. So, yeah, that's the Earthbound PJ run. It may not make a lot of sense if you've never played the game casually or know the speedrun itself, but it is silly, and it shows you a lot of glitches and a lot of weird ways that we can take a very long game and beat it while staying in our pajamas, while in real life we're probably still here in our... I am, at least, in my pajamas. I don't know if TwugEB is. I don't know if they use pajamas in Canada.
Oh, we have to wear pajamas in Canada or we'd freeze. Actually, we got 20... Wow, we got 2/3 of a foot of snow last night where I live. We use centimeters up here. I don't know what 20 centimeters is in inches, but 2/3 of a foot.
Well, Canada, stop being like the rest of the world. Join us here in America.
Yeah, why use a system that makes sense that goes by 100s instead of like, you know, yards that are from your nose to your finger?
I just don't adhere to your decimal system.
And this is where the stream usually breaks.
Yeah, so here's what I was talking about. If you follow your eyesight and look away for a second, because you will definitely get... definitely have some burden on your eyesight after watching this.
Also, I'd just like to thank you for commenting for me. That is awesome. You took time out of your day to do that for me. Thank you so much.
I didn't take time out of my day. I like to be an optimist and say I added time to my day.
There you go.
Thank you for having me. And Twug, you know, thanks for the awesome run. So 105 is still a very good time, especially in a marathon setting. So congratulations on that time. And you'll get the world record back, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's the next goal. It's though he set it really low. I was the first person to sub, only person to sub 105. Now he subbed 104. He's got 103.46, I think, is the record.
You'll get it. I believe in you. And thank you also, Pixels for Peace.
Yes, thank you.
Keep on raising that money.
Yeah, everyone donate. And I guess we'll throw it back to Iridescence.
Unless I want to see some glitches, we're done.
Actually, I don't know how many glitches I can do because of I can't even go back to the house because the barricade is still set up in Onet, like up near Ness's house. I've tried to go before.
The phone in winter should still work.
Oh, I guess the phone does.
Anyway, guys, thank you for showing off that run, Twug. Thank you, everything, Alti. Due to some technical difficulties, Tailspin is not going to be shown up next due to some internet issues. So, shall be doing a backup run in just a moment of a game called Bright Memory. It's a quick run, pretty full of action, so stick around for that, and we'll be back very soon.